In a small town, there was a girl who loved music more than anything else in the world. She didn't have much, and her family struggled to make ends meet, but she always found a way to spend her time with the little piano she had. It was old, with a few keys slightly stuck, and the sound was not perfect, but she treated it like a treasure. Every day, she would sit in front of it for hours, pressing the keys gently at first, trying to hear the right sound. She would close her eyes and imagine a big concert hall, imagining people listening and feeling the music as deeply as she did. From a very young age, she felt that music could express everything she wanted to say when words were not enough. Some days, she would be frustrated when a note didn't sound right, but she never gave up. She would start again and again, listening carefully to each sound and trying to improve. Her parents noticed her passion and would quietly watch her, amazed at how focused she could be. Even though they could not afford piano lessons, they encouraged her to keep playing. At school, things were different. Her classmates did not understand her love for music. Some would laugh at her when she tried to practice during breaks. They would whisper to each other that she would never be good at the piano, that it was useless to keep trying. Even a few teachers who should have supported her made comments that she was not talented, that maybe she should focus on something else. Hearing this hurt her deeply. She would sit alone in the corner, holding her hands over the keys and wondering if they were right. But despite the ridicule, she kept going. She had a small notebook where she would write down her own music, notes she had imagined in her head, melodies that she hoped would sound beautiful one day. She would play them slowly at first, then faster, always trying to make them better. Music became her safe place, the one thing in the world where she felt free and understood, even if no one else saw it. At home, she would sneak extra time with the piano whenever she could. Sometimes, she would play late at night when everyone else was asleep, the only light in the room coming from a small lamp. She didn't play to impress anyone. She played because she needed to. The keys under her fingers felt alive, and the music felt like a conversation between her heart and the world. Even if it was just the walls listening, she felt that someone was hearing her, someone who understood what she was trying to say. Her love for music grew with every day. She started trying more complicated songs, pieces that were written for bigger pianos in big halls. She struggled at first, but slowly, day by day, she improved. Every small success made her more determined. Even when the fingers ached and the sound was not perfect, she would smile, because she knew she was learning something important. Every mistake was a step closer to getting it right. Outside of her practice, she would watch other musicians play when she had the chance. Sometimes, there were local concerts, and she would sit quietly at the back, listening and trying to remember every note. She would take mental notes, imagining how she would play if she were on that stage. She never compared herself in a negative way, because she knew she had her own journey. But she dreamed of the day when she could play like that, when the music she created would reach people's hearts. People around her continued to doubt her, and sometimes the negative words stung. But she learned to turn them into fuel. She would think, if they think I can't do it, then I will show them differently. This thought made her practice even harder. She spent hours trying to make the notes flow smoothly, trying to make the melodies sing, and trying to make her music something that people could feel, not just hear. Even though she lived in a small house with few comforts, her piano became a place where she could be rich in emotion and imagination. She would close her eyes and picture herself in different places. A concert hall with thousands of people listening quietly, a small cafe where someone would stop to hear the melody, or even a quiet park where the music could float through the air. Each time she played, she built her dream little by little. Sometimes she felt lonely. It was hard when the people around her didn't understand her. Some days, she would sit with her head down, thinking maybe they were right. But then she would place her fingers on the keys, and all her doubts would disappear. The sound of the piano reminded her who she was and what she loved. It reminded her that talent was not always about what others could see. It was about what you believed inside. The girl also discovered that music had the power to change moods. On days when she felt sad, a slow melody would calm her. On days when she felt happy, fast and lively tunes would make her heart race. She realized that the piano could carry feelings that were sometimes too big for words. This made her even more certain that she could never stop playing, no matter what anyone said. Her family sometimes worried that she was wasting her time, but they also saw the joy in her eyes when she played. They started saving small amounts to repair the piano when keys broke or strings went out of tune. They may not have understood all the music she created, but they could see that it mattered to her, and that was enough to support her. Over time, the girl started experimenting with her own style. She would mix the songs she learned with her own ideas, creating something new. It wasn't perfect, but it was hers. She would play the songs slowly, then faster, trying different rhythms, trying to make the music express her feelings in ways words could not. She felt proud of these creations, even if no one else noticed. Even though many people doubted her, she held on to one truth: that music was her voice. One day, when the time was right, she would play for people who truly listened. And when that day came, she would prove that being labeled untalented did not define her. Every hour she spent at the piano, every mistake she corrected, every melody she imagined, was bringing her closer to that moment. She continued to practice every single day, sometimes for hours, sometimes late into the night. Her dedication became a part of who she was. And though the world might not see it yet, the seeds of greatness were growing quietly, hidden in the simple love of a girl and her piano. She had a dream, and every note she played was a step toward making it real. She might be small, and she might be underestimated, but her music was already beginning to shine in ways that no one could ignore forever. After many months of practicing in her small room, the girl began to notice changes in herself. She was more confident, even if she did not show it to others. She knew that each day she spent on the piano was helping her grow. But life outside her room was not as kind. Her classmates continued to whisper behind her back. Some teachers still doubted her, making comments about how she should focus on more practical things. These words hurt, but she learned to listen less to them and focus more on what she could control. She began to notice that music was not just about hitting the right notes. It was about feeling, about connecting with emotions that were sometimes hard to describe. She started to experiment more, trying to play pieces the way she imagined them in her mind. Some days were frustrating, and she wanted to give up, but the thought of her piano, and the way it made her feel alive, kept her going. She discovered that patience and persistence were as important as talent. At school, a few moments surprised her. During breaks, she would sometimes hum a tune, quietly, while others were talking or playing outside. A classmate once paused and asked her where she had learned to make such a melody. For the first time, someone noticed her gift, even in a small way. These tiny moments gave her hope and reminded her that her music could reach people if she let it. She started to pay attention to every sound around her. The rustling of leaves, the footsteps in the hallway, the rain hitting the window, all became part of her imagination. She would try to recreate these sounds on the piano, finding ways to make everyday noises into music. Slowly, she realized that her creativity was growing and that she could take inspiration from life itself. This made her practice sessions exciting, full of discovery. Despite these small joys, she still felt the weight of doubt from others. Her friends at school rarely encouraged her, and sometimes she would come home in tears, frustrated and sad. But when she sat at the piano, all the sadness would melt away. She would play softly at first, letting her fingers guide her, and by the end, she felt lighter and stronger. Music had become her way of coping, her way to process emotions that were otherwise too complicated to explain. At home, her parents noticed how much she had grown. They could see the difference between the girl who had been discouraged and the one who now held her head a little higher, even if she was still quiet around others. They tried to find ways to encourage her further. Sometimes they would play simple melodies with her, even if they were not skilled musicians. Sometimes they would invite neighbors to hear her play, just to show that her talent was real. These moments gave her a sense of belonging and validation. She also began to dream bigger. At first, she thought of just playing well enough to make herself proud. But gradually, she imagined playing in front of more people, sharing her music in a way that could touch others. She imagined a large stage, bright lights, and an audience listening quietly, feeling every note. She knew it was far away, but the thought made her heart race and gave her purpose. As she practiced, she faced new challenges. Some pieces were harder than anything she had tried before. She would struggle with complicated rhythms and difficult keys. Sometimes she would get frustrated and slam her hands down, but after a few deep breaths, she would try again. She learned that mistakes were not failures, but lessons. Each time she got something right, it felt like a victory, and she celebrated quietly in her room. She also started teaching herself new techniques. She would watch videos secretly online or listen to recordings of famous pianists and try to copy them. She discovered that each musician had a unique style, and she could borrow ideas without copying. Her own style began to develop, subtle and personal, shaped by her experiences and emotions. It became something that was entirely hers. Her determination began to stand out, even if many people still doubted her. A few classmates who had laughed at her before now asked her questions about music, curious about how she learned to play certain notes. She felt a small sense of pride, knowing that they were noticing her effort. It wasn't recognition yet, but it was progress. She understood that recognition would come only when she was ready. Outside school, she found inspiration in everyday life. Walking home, she would listen to the wind or the birds and try to imagine how she could play that on the piano. She would hum new melodies she had never tried before, capturing ideas quickly so she would not forget them. Music became a way for her to explore the world and her feelings. It was no longer just a hobby. It was a way to understand herself. She also began to imagine the future more clearly. She thought about competitions, recitals, and the possibility of performing for people who truly listened. The thought both excited and scared her. She was aware that the world could still be harsh and that people might judge her. But she felt that she could not stop. Her music had become too important. It was a part of her identity, something no one could take away. Some days were still very hard. She would encounter people who ridiculed her attempts or dismissed her passion. She felt small and invisible again, but she learned to breathe and remind herself why she played. She remembered the feeling of joy when a melody flowed perfectly, when her fingers moved effortlessly, and when her music made her heart race. These moments were enough to push her forward. She also learned that her emotions influenced her music. When she felt happy, her playing became lively and bright. When she was sad, the music was soft, gentle, and sometimes melancholic. She realized that she could express feelings through the piano in ways words could not. This gave her hope that one day, her music could touch other people the same way it touched her. Over time, she became more disciplined. She set goals for herself and kept a schedule for practice, even when it was difficult. Some evenings, she would force herself to keep playing even when tired, knowing that consistency was as important as talent. Slowly, her progress became visible. Notes that were once difficult now flowed smoothly. Pieces that once felt impossible now sounded beautiful. She also started to imagine herself inspiring others. She thought of younger children who might be discouraged like she had been and realized that her journey could be an example of perseverance. She wanted to show that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, practice, and belief in oneself mattered just as much. This thought made her feel proud and motivated her to work even harder. Even with these improvements, she remained humble. She knew that there was much more to learn and that every musician, no matter how talented, faced challenges. She embraced the learning process and took joy in each small improvement. She understood that success was not about impressing others immediately but about growing step by step, day by day. As months passed, her music began to change. It was richer, more emotional, and full of personality. She could play pieces she had once only dreamed of, adding her own touch and imagination. When she practiced, she no longer just tried to hit the notes correctly. She played to tell a story, to share her emotions, and to connect with anyone who might listen. She began to notice that people's reactions were slowly changing. While many still doubted her, a few teachers and classmates started to nod in appreciation or smile when they heard her playing. Even strangers, passing by her home when she played near a window, would stop for a moment to listen. These moments encouraged her and made her feel that she was on the right path. She never lost her humility or the love for music that started it all. Even when she imagined performing on a big stage or winning competitions, she remembered the small room where it all began, the old piano, and the quiet hours spent learning and dreaming. This grounding kept her focused, patient, and determined. Through all the struggles and small victories, the girl grew stronger in spirit and skill. She understood that talent alone was not enough to overcome obstacles. What mattered most was persistence, belief in oneself, and the courage to continue even when others doubted you. She realized that her music could one day show the world who she truly was. And so, with every note she played, every melody she imagined, and every hour spent practicing, she moved closer to her dream. She may have been labeled untalented by others, but inside, she knew the truth. Her music was her gift, her voice, and her way to shine. The journey was just beginning, but the foundation had been laid. She had discovered that passion, courage, and perseverance could carry her further than any judgment or doubt ever could. One day, a poster appeared on the notice board at school about a local music competition. The girl stopped and stared at it for a long time. Her heart raced. She had never performed in front of strangers before. The thought of playing in front of people who might judge her made her nervous. But at the same time, a spark of excitement lit up inside her. This could be the moment she had been waiting for. She could finally show herself what she was capable of. For days, she thought about entering the competition. She imagined herself on a stage, the piano in front of her, the audience waiting. Every scenario played in her mind. Sometimes, fear would creep in, making her doubt herself. She worried about making mistakes or sounding foolish in front of others. But then, she remembered all the hours she had spent practicing in her small room, all the melodies she had created in secret. She realized that those efforts had prepared her for this moment. She decided to enter the competition. The next few weeks became a mix of excitement and hard work. She started practicing even more seriously than before. She chose a challenging piece that she loved, one that she felt could show not only her skill but also her emotion. Every day, she would play for hours, focusing on every note, every rhythm, every subtle touch that made the music come alive. She wanted to be ready, not for the applause, but to express herself fully through the music. Her practice sessions were not always easy. Some days, her fingers would feel stiff and her mind would wander. Sometimes, she would hit wrong notes again and feel frustrated. But she learned to take deep breaths, start over, and keep going. She realized that the struggle was part of the journey. Each mistake taught her something new and helped her understand the music better. At home, her parents noticed the change in her. She was more focused, more disciplined, and also more joyful despite the stress. They encouraged her quietly, offering words of support and small gestures that meant a lot. Sometimes they would sit and listen as she practiced, even if they didn't understand all the notes. Their presence gave her strength. Knowing that someone cared and believed in her made her feel less alone. As the competition day approached, nervousness and excitement mixed inside her. She would practice late at night, imagining the stage, imagining the audience, imagining the applause. She would close her eyes and picture every detail. The bright lights, the soft murmur of the audience, the feel of the piano keys under her fingers. These visualizations made her feel ready, though she still worried about mistakes. She learned that fear was natural, but it did not have to stop her. She also began to reflect on why she loved music. It was not just about winning or showing others. Music was her language, the way she could communicate what was deep inside her heart. The thought of sharing that with an audience gave her courage. She decided that no matter what happened, she would play with all her heart, and that honesty in her music mattered more than perfection. The day of the competition arrived. The girl walked into the hall, her heart pounding. The stage looked bigger than she had imagined. She saw the judges sitting at the front and the seats filled with people. Whispers and movements around her made her nervous. Her hands trembled slightly as she approached the piano. She took a deep breath, sat down, and placed her fingers gently on the keys. At first, the notes sounded soft, almost unsure, but as she continued, something changed. She stopped thinking about the audience and started thinking only about the music. Each note carried her emotions, her dreams, and her struggles. Her fingers moved with confidence, flowing across the keys. The melodies she had practiced so many times in her small room now filled the hall, pure and heartfelt. The audience fell silent, captivated by the sound. She played with everything she had. Each crescendo, each delicate touch, each pause held meaning. People in the audience began to lean forward, listening closely. Even the judges, who had seen many musicians before, were impressed by her depth and the emotion in her playing. The girl did not notice them. She was lost in the music, expressing herself in a way she never had before. As the final notes echoed through the hall, there was a moment of silence. Then slowly applause began. It started softly but grew louder and louder, filling the room. The girl felt a rush of relief and joy. She had done it. She had shared her music with others and it had reached them. People were smiling, some were wiping tears, and the energy in the hall was incredible. She realized that all the practice, all the struggles, and all the doubts had led to this moment. After the performance, judges came forward to congratulate her. They praised not only her technical skill but also the emotion and depth in her playing. They said that she had a unique voice in music, something rare and special. The girl listened quietly, smiling, her heart full. She realized that talent was not just about notes and rhythm, but about courage, dedication, and the ability to express oneself. Her classmates and teachers were also amazed. Many who had doubted her before could not hide their surprise. Some came to her after the competition and admitted that they had been wrong to judge her too soon. Their words felt good, but even more than that, she felt proud of herself. She had trusted her heart and her music, and it had guided her to a place she had only dreamed of. That evening, walking home, the girl felt a sense of accomplishment and possibility. She understood that this was only the beginning. The music had opened a door, and now she could continue to explore, learn, and grow. She could dream bigger, aim higher, and continue to share her gift with the world. The experience had taught her that perseverance, passion, and belief in oneself could overcome doubt and fear. From that day on, she practiced with even more dedication, knowing that the music she created had power. She thought of all the people who might hear her music in the future, all the hearts she could touch, and all the dreams she could inspire. She realized that being labeled untalented did not define her. Her actions, her passion, and her music defined her, and those things were unstoppable. The girl began to write her own compositions, inspired by the competition experience. Each piece carried a story, a feeling, or a memory. She experimented with new sounds, new rhythms, and new ways to express herself. Music was no longer just a practice routine or a dream. It had become a living part of her life, a companion, and a guide. She also noticed how music could connect people. Friends, family, and even strangers who listened to her playing would respond with emotions. Some smiling, some teary, some thoughtful. She understood that music was universal, capable of touching hearts beyond words. This understanding made her feel proud and responsible, knowing that she had something valuable to share with the world. Over the following months, she continued to improve. Each day brought new challenges and new victories. Sometimes she felt tired or frustrated, but the memory of her performance in the competition reminded her why she played. The joy of expressing herself and connecting with others through music was stronger than any obstacle. She had learned that persistence, practice, and belief in oneself were more powerful than any doubt or criticism. The girl's journey had taken a new turn. She was no longer only the girl practicing alone in her room. She had stepped into a larger world, one filled with possibilities. She began to dream of larger stages, more competitions, and opportunities to learn from other musicians. Her confidence grew, but she remained humble, remembering the small piano that had been her first teacher. She also realized that music was a lifelong journey. There would always be more to learn, more to explore, and more emotions to express. She embraced this idea, feeling excited rather than intimidated. Every note she played, every melody she imagined, and every moment spent practicing was a step forward. She understood that the path of a musician was not just about recognition or fame, but about growth, expression, and connection. Through it all, she never forgot why she started. The small piano in her room, the quiet hours spent practicing, and the love for music that had always been inside her continued to guide her. No matter how far she went, she knew that her passion was the heart of her journey. It was this passion that had brought her to the competition, and it would continue to lead her toward greater heights. The experience of performing publicly for the first time transformed her. She had faced fear, overcome doubt, and expressed herself fully through music. She had discovered the power of her own voice and the beauty of sharing it with others. From that moment on, she played not just for herself, but for anyone who needed to hear her music, for anyone who needed to feel what she could express with every note. And so, her journey continued, filled with hope, growth, and the promise of a future shaped by her dedication and love for music. After her first competition, the girl's confidence grew, but she did not let it make her complacent. She knew that music was a lifelong journey and that she had much to learn. She continued to practice every day, trying new pieces, creating her own compositions, and refining her skills. But this time, there was a new purpose behind every note she played. She had experienced the power of sharing music with others, and she wanted to reach even more people. One day, a local community center announced a talent showcase for young artists. It was not a formal competition, but a stage where performers could share their art. The girl felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She remembered the first competition and how nervous she had been. She thought about the audience, the lights, and the piano waiting for her. But unlike before, she now had experience, and she trusted herself more. She decided to participate. For weeks, she prepared a special piece, a composition she had created herself. It was different from anything she had played before. It combined soft, flowing melodies with strong, dramatic notes. Every chord reflected her feelings, her struggles, her dreams, and her hopes. She wanted the music to tell a story, to make the audience feel what she felt, and to show that she had grown not only as a pianist but also as an artist. Her practice sessions were intense. She spent hours perfecting every measure, listening carefully to how the notes blended together, and making small adjustments. Sometimes she would stop and feel frustrated if a section did not sound the way she imagined. But she learned to be patient with herself. She understood that mistakes were part of the process and that each attempt brought her closer to the perfect performance. As the day of the showcase approached, her anticipation grew. She could feel butterflies in her stomach, but this time, she welcomed them. She knew they meant she cared, and that her music mattered. On the day of the event, she walked into the community center, feeling the energy of the room. There were other performers, people talking, and the audience slowly filling the seats. She felt a small surge of fear but quickly reminded herself that she was ready. When her turn arrived, she walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, and the piano stood in the center, waiting for her. She took a deep breath, sat down, and placed her fingers gently on the keys. The room grew quiet as she began to play. The first notes were soft, delicate, almost like a whisper. But as she continued, the music grew stronger, more confident. She let her emotions guide her fingers, and soon, the entire room was filled with the sound of her music. The audience was captivated. People leaned forward, listening carefully to every note, every pause, every crescendo. Some closed their eyes, letting the music wash over them. The girl was no longer thinking about her nerves or the audience. She was fully immersed in the music, expressing herself with every movement of her hands. She could feel the energy of the room, the connection between her and the listeners, and it made her performance even more powerful. When she reached the final chord, the room was silent for a moment, as if everyone was holding their breath. Then, applause erupted. People stood up, cheering and clapping, some with tears in their eyes. The girl felt a rush of joy and relief. She had not only played well, but she had touched the hearts of the audience. For the first time, She realized that music could create a bridge between her and others, that her emotions could be shared and understood without a single word spoken. After the performance, several audience members came forward to compliment her. Some said they had never heard such heartfelt music from someone her age. Others admitted they had doubted her abilities in the past and were now amazed. The girl listened quietly, smiling, feeling proud but humble. She understood that her journey was just beginning, and that there would be many more challenges ahead. But this moment had shown her what was possible. Her parents were also there, watching her with pride and emotion. They had supported her quietly all along, and now they could see the result of her dedication. Their smiles and applause filled her with warmth. She realized that her family's belief in her had been as important as her own efforts. She felt grateful, knowing that she was not alone in her journey. The showcase experience inspired the girl to aim higher. She wanted to share her music with more people, to perform in larger venues, and to continue growing as a pianist. She began to research more challenging pieces, to learn from recordings of famous musicians, and to experiment with her own compositions. She understood that success in music was not only about skill but also about expression, creativity, and perseverance. In the weeks following the showcase, the girl noticed changes in herself. She felt more confident in her abilities and more comfortable expressing her emotions through music. She began to see her practice sessions as opportunities to explore, to experiment, and to connect with herself. Each day, she pushed herself to try new techniques, to play more complex pieces, and to express more depth in her performances. Her relationship with others also began to change. Some classmates who had once laughed at her now asked her for advice or complimented her progress. Even a few teachers showed respect for her dedication and improvement. These changes encouraged her, but she remained focused on her love for music rather than external validation. She knew that her true reward was in the music itself, in the joy of playing and expressing her feelings. The girl also began to share her music in small ways outside of formal events. She would play for neighbors, friends, and even strangers who happened to pass by when she practiced at home. She noticed how people responded, how the music could brighten someone's day, bring comfort, or inspire thought. These experiences reinforced her belief in the power of music and her desire to continue pursuing it. Over time, she faced new challenges. Some pieces were difficult, requiring technical skill and emotional depth that tested her abilities. She would spend hours practicing, sometimes feeling frustrated or exhausted. But she had learned to be patient, to approach each challenge step by step, and to celebrate small victories. Every mistake was a lesson, every success a stepping stone toward greater achievement. She also began to reflect on the journey she had taken so far. She remembered the days when people had labeled her untalented, when she had felt invisible and discouraged. She realized that those experiences had shaped her, had given her the determination to keep going, and had made her appreciate every small success even more. She understood that her journey was not only about music but also about resilience, courage, and self-belief. The girl's music continued to evolve. Her compositions became more expressive, more complex, and more personal. She experimented with different styles, blending soft melodies with dramatic chords, creating pieces that told stories without words. She realized that music was not just a skill to master, but a language to communicate feelings, thoughts, and experiences. This understanding made her practice sessions more meaningful and exciting. She also began to inspire others. Younger students and friends who saw her dedication and performances began to take an interest in music. Some asked her to help them learn, and she shared her knowledge and experience willingly. She felt proud to guide others, knowing that her journey could encourage them to pursue their own passions. She understood that success was not just personal but could also impact the lives of others. Despite her growing confidence and recognition, the girl remained humble and focused. She knew that the journey of a musician was never truly complete. There would always be new challenges, new pieces to learn, and new ways to express herself. She embraced this reality with enthusiasm, knowing that every day of practice, every performance, and every composition brought her closer to realizing her full potential. Through it all, she never forgot her beginnings. The small piano in her room, the quiet hours spent practicing alone, and the moments of doubt and perseverance continued to guide her. She knew that her love for music had been the key to her growth, and it would continue to be her guiding force. Every note she played, every melody she imagined, and every performance she gave was a testament to her dedication and passion. The showcase had been a turning point. It had shown her the power of music to connect with others and the importance of expressing herself fully. It had also taught her that fear and doubt could be overcome with preparation, practice, and self-belief. These lessons would stay with her forever, shaping not only her music but also her character and her approach to life. From that day on, the girl approached music with a deeper understanding and a stronger sense of purpose. She knew that her journey would not always be easy, but she was ready to face challenges, embrace growth, and continue sharing her music with the world. The path ahead was filled with possibilities, and she was determined to explore them fully, letting her talent, passion, and heart guide her every step of the way. Her story was no longer just about being labeled untalented. It was about perseverance, growth, and the transformative power of music. Each performance, each practice session, and each composition brought her closer to becoming the musician she was meant to be. She had discovered that true talent was not defined by others, but by dedication, passion, and the courage to follow one's dreams. And with that realization, she continued her journey, ready for whatever challenges and triumphs lay ahead. Months passed after the community showcase, and the girl's confidence continued to grow. She had developed a routine that balanced practice, study, and exploration. Her skills were improving daily, and her compositions were becoming more sophisticated. Each day, she felt herself getting closer to the level she had dreamed of. Yet, despite her growing ability, she remained humble and focused on the journey rather than the accolades. One morning, a local music teacher visited her school, offering workshops and lessons for students interested in performing. The girl's heart skipped a beat when she heard this news. She had never had formal training, and the idea of learning from someone experienced excited her. She signed up immediately. The lessons were challenging, and the teacher pushed her to explore dynamics, emotion, and expression in ways she had not yet considered. Each session was exhausting but enlightening. She realized that music was more than technique. It was about telling a story and connecting deeply with listeners. Over the next few weeks, she dedicated herself to these lessons, practicing relentlessly. Her fingers grew stronger, her timing more precise, and her interpretations more expressive. She also began to understand the nuances of performance. The pauses, the crescendos, the silence between notes that carried as much meaning as the music itself. Every day, she felt herself becoming a better musician, and more importantly, someone capable of touching others' hearts with her playing. The school announced another performance event, this time larger than the previous showcase. Students from other schools were invited, and local community members would attend as well. The girl felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She knew this was a bigger stage, a larger audience, and the stakes felt higher. But she also knew she was ready to show what she had learned and how far she had come. In the weeks leading up to the event, she practiced diligently, perfecting her chosen piece, a composition she had been working on for months. This piece was special, combining classical techniques with her own personal touch. It reflected her journey, her struggles, and her growth. Every note told a story. She wanted the audience to feel the depth of emotion she had poured into it. On the day of the performance, the auditorium was buzzing with anticipation. She could hear the chatter of students, teachers, and parents. The bright lights on the stage made her hands tremble slightly as she approached the piano. But she took a deep breath, recalling every hour she had spent practicing, every moment she had believed in herself when others did not. She reminded herself that this was her opportunity to share her music, to express herself fully. As she began to play, the audience fell silent. The soft opening notes captured their attention immediately. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, yet each note was full of emotion. The melodies rose and fell, carrying her story across the room. People were captivated, Some closed their eyes, some leaned forward, and some were visibly moved by the depth and beauty of her music. She felt a connection with them, an unspoken understanding that music could transcend words. Midway through her performance, she felt a surge of confidence. The music seemed to flow effortlessly from her heart to her fingers, filling the room with life. She forgot about the stage, the lights, and the audience, becoming completely immersed in the story she was telling through sound. Every note, every pause, every gentle touch on the keys communicated emotion. She realized that she was not just playing music. She was sharing her soul with the world. As the final chord resonated, the auditorium was silent for a heartbeat, as if everyone was holding their breath. Then, the applause erupted, growing louder and louder until it filled the entire space. People stood to their feet, cheering, clapping, and some even wiping tears from their eyes. The girl felt a rush of joy, relief, and pride. She had done it. She had not only performed flawlessly but had touched hearts, moved people, and made them feel her story. After the performance, many people came to congratulate her. Some said they had never heard such a heartfelt and expressive performance from someone her age. Others admitted that they had doubted her abilities and were now amazed. The girl smiled quietly, feeling proud but humble. She realized that recognition, while gratifying, was not the most important part of her journey. The most meaningful part was the connection she had made with others through her music. Her parents, who had been watching from the audience, were overwhelmed with pride. They had supported her quietly from the beginning, providing encouragement and love even when resources were scarce. Seeing her perform so beautifully and move so many people made them realize how much dedication and perseverance mattered. They hugged her tightly after the event, and she felt a warmth she would never forget. This performance also caught the attention of a local newspaper journalist who had attended the event. The journalist wrote an article about her, highlighting her dedication, growth, and the emotional impact of her performance. The article described how a girl who had once been labeled untalented had become a source of inspiration for many. When she read it later, the girl felt a mixture of surprise and happiness. She knew that her journey was gaining recognition, but she also knew that the story was not just about her talent. It was about perseverance, passion, and the courage to keep going. Over the following months, she received invitations to perform at other events and gatherings. Each performance brought new challenges and new experiences. She learned to adapt to different audiences, different pianos, and different environments. She discovered that no two performances were ever the same, and each required her full attention, dedication, and emotional presence. She embraced this, understanding that growth came from stepping out of her comfort zone and facing new situations with courage. She also began mentoring younger students who showed an interest in music. She shared her experiences, techniques, and the lessons she had learned about perseverance and self-belief. She wanted them to understand that talent alone was not enough and that dedication, practice, and the willingness to keep trying despite obstacles were equally important. This mentoring gave her a sense of purpose beyond her own performances. The girl's reputation as a talented and expressive pianist began to grow. People who had doubted her before now spoke of her skill and artistry with respect. She remained grounded, however, understanding that recognition was not the ultimate goal. Her love for music, her desire to express herself, and her commitment to improvement remained at the heart of her journey. Through all these experiences, she learned valuable lessons about resilience, humility, and the power of following one's passion. She understood that challenges and setbacks were inevitable but could be overcome with dedication and belief in oneself. Every performance, every practice session, and every new composition was a step forward, shaping her into the musician and person she was becoming. She also realized that her journey could inspire others. Friends, younger students, and even strangers were touched by her dedication and the beauty of her music. Some wrote to her, saying that her story had encouraged them to pursue their own passions despite obstacles. This realization filled her with gratitude and motivation. She understood that music was not just about personal achievement but also about the potential to inspire and connect with others. As she continued to perform, compose, and practice, she never forgot the early days when people had labeled her untalented. Those moments of doubt had fueled her determination, teaching her resilience and patience. She knew that her journey was a testament to the power of perseverance, passion, and self-belief. Every note she played carried the story of her struggles and triumphs, making her music even more meaningful. The girl's journey was far from over, but she had reached an important milestone. She had experienced the joy of touching others' hearts with her music, the thrill of performing publicly, and the pride of overcoming doubt and criticism. She had discovered that talent alone was not enough, and that dedication, passion, and courage were the keys to true success. Looking ahead, she dreamed of larger stages, more opportunities to share her music, and the chance to continue growing as an artist. She understood that the path would not always be easy, but she was ready to face challenges with determination and grace. Each new experience, each new performance, and each new composition would be another step on her journey, helping her reach her full potential and inspire others along the way. Through it all, she remained focused on the most important part of her journey, the music itself. Every note, every melody, and every chord was a reflection of her heart and soul. She knew that as long as she stayed true to herself and her passion, her music would continue to touch lives and create a lasting impact. And with that understanding, she continued her journey, ready to embrace every challenge, celebrate every success, and share her gift with the world. Over time, the girl's music began to reach more and more people. Performances that once felt intimidating now felt like opportunities to share a piece of herself. She had grown from the shy, uncertain girl who had been told she was untalented into a confident and expressive pianist who touched the hearts of everyone who listened. Yet, she never forgot the long hours of practice in her small room, the old piano with its uneven keys, and the doubt that had fueled her determination. One day, she received an invitation to perform at a city-wide music festival. It was the largest event she had ever been invited to, and she felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. The thought of playing in front of a large audience, with people who had never heard her music before, made her heart race. But she also felt ready. She had grown so much as a musician, and she trusted that her passion and dedication would carry her through. In the weeks leading up to the festival, she dedicated herself fully to preparation. She polished her most challenging pieces, composed new melodies, and practiced tirelessly. She studied the techniques of accomplished pianists, experimenting with dynamics, expression, and storytelling through music. Her hands moved with precision and confidence, but it was her heart that guided every note. Each session brought new discoveries, and each melody became a reflection of her journey. As the day of the festival arrived, she walked into the large hall, her stomach fluttering with anticipation. The stage was set with bright lights, and the audience filled every seat. The energy in the room was palpable. She could hear murmurs of excitement and see the eager faces of people waiting to hear her play. Her fingers trembled slightly as she approached the piano, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself of all she had accomplished to reach this moment. When she began to play, the hall fell silent. Her music flowed effortlessly, soft and delicate at first, then powerful and commanding. Every note carried her emotions, her struggles, her triumphs, her dreams, and her passion. The audience was captivated. Some closed their eyes, some leaned forward, and some were visibly moved by the depth and beauty of her performance. She felt a connection with them, an unspoken understanding that music could transcend words. Midway through her performance, she noticed that the audience was completely absorbed. The energy in the room shifted as her music created a shared experience. People were leaning into the melodies, feeling every rise and fall, every pause, and every gentle touch on the keys. She was no longer playing notes. She was telling a story, and the story was being felt by everyone in the hall. As the final notes resonated, the room was silent for a heartbeat, as if the audience were holding their breath. Then, the applause erupted, louder than anything she had experienced before. People stood to their feet, cheering, clapping, and some were even moved to tears. The girl felt a rush of joy and relief. She had not only performed well, but she had connected deeply with the audience, sharing her heart through music. For the first time, she truly understood the power of her gift. After the performance, many people came to congratulate her. They spoke of the emotion in her playing, the story her music told, and the depth of her expression. Some admitted they had doubted her abilities before and were now amazed by her talent and growth. The girl smiled quietly, feeling proud yet humble. She knew that her journey was not defined by their opinions, but by her dedication, perseverance, and love for music. Her parents, who had supported her throughout her journey, were overwhelmed with pride. They had watched her grow from a shy girl who practiced in a small room into a confident young musician who could touch hearts with her music. Their encouragement and belief in her had been a foundation she could always rely on. They hugged her tightly after the performance, tears in their eyes, and she felt a warmth she would never forget. The festival performance marked a turning point. She began to receive invitations to perform at other events, both locally and in neighboring cities. Each new opportunity brought challenges but also growth. She learned to adapt to different venues, different pianos, and diverse audiences. She realized that music was not just a personal journey, but also a way to connect with the world and inspire others. She continued to compose her own music, exploring new ideas and techniques. Her compositions became a reflection of her experiences, emotions, and dreams. She experimented with different styles, blending classical elements with modern interpretations, creating pieces that were uniquely hers. Each composition carried her story, her struggles, and her triumphs, allowing others to feel what she felt and understand her journey through sound. As her music gained recognition, she also began mentoring younger students. She shared her experiences, techniques, and the lessons she had learned about perseverance and self-belief. She wanted them to understand that talent alone was not enough, and that dedication, practice, and the courage to keep trying despite obstacles were equally important. She found joy in guiding others, knowing that her journey could inspire them to pursue their own passions. Despite growing recognition, she remained humble. She understood that success was not just about applause or accolades but about the journey, the learning, and the impact of her music on others. She continued to practice diligently, always seeking to improve and express herself more fully. She knew that music was a lifelong pursuit, and that each day offered new opportunities to grow and explore. She also reflected on the people who had doubted her in the past. The whispers of "untalented" that once haunted her now seemed distant. Those words had fueled her determination and shaped her resilience. She realized that being underestimated had given her a strength that few could understand. It had taught her the value of perseverance, the importance of believing in oneself, and the power of dedication. Over time, her music began to reach even wider audiences. Local radio stations and social media platforms shared her performances, and people from different communities began to follow her journey. She received letters and messages from listeners who were moved by her music and inspired by her story. They shared how her perseverance encouraged them to pursue their own dreams despite challenges. This realization filled her with gratitude and reinforced her belief in the power of music to create connection and change lives. The girl continued to perform at increasingly larger venues. Each performance was a new experience, a new opportunity to connect with people and share her heart through music. She learned to manage the nerves and excitement that came with performing, understanding that they were part of the journey and that they could be transformed into energy to enhance her music. Each audience, each stage, each note played was a step toward her dream. She also explored collaborations with other musicians, discovering how her music could blend with different instruments and styles. These collaborations taught her flexibility, creativity, and the joy of making music together. She realized that music was not only a personal expression but also a shared experience, a way to build community and create memories that would last a lifetime. Despite the growing fame and opportunities, she stayed true to her roots. She continued to practice on the piano that had first inspired her, remembering the hours spent alone in her room, the struggles, and the small victories that had shaped her. She understood that her journey was a combination of talent, hard work, support, and the courage to pursue her passion. She remained grateful for every moment, knowing that it had brought her to where she was. The girl's story became an inspiration for many. People admired not only her musical talent but also her resilience, dedication, and ability to overcome doubt and obstacles. She showed that being labeled untalented did not define a person and that passion, perseverance, and self-belief could transform a dream into reality. Her journey demonstrated that music was not only a skill to master, but a language to communicate emotions, tell stories, and touch hearts. As she looked ahead, she dreamed of new stages, new audiences, and new challenges. She knew that her journey was far from over, and that there would always be opportunities to grow, learn, and inspire. Each performance, each composition, and each interaction with listeners became a building block for her legacy. She understood that her true impact was not measured by awards or recognition alone, but by the joy, inspiration, and emotional connection she created through her music. Through it all, she never lost sight of why she began her journey. The small piano in her room, the quiet hours of practice, and the love for music that had driven her from the beginning remained at the heart of everything she did. Every note she played carried her story, her struggles, and her triumphs. Every melody was a reflection of her heart and soul, a testament to the power of perseverance and passion. In the end, the girl who had once been labeled untalented became a symbol of hope and inspiration. Her music touched lives, her story motivated others, and her dedication proved that with belief, hard work, and courage, it was possible to overcome any obstacle. She had transformed doubt into strength, fear into confidence, and passion into a gift that could be shared with the world. Her journey was not just about music. It was about resilience, growth, and the human spirit. She had shown that talent is only part of the equation, and that determination, practice, and belief in oneself can create something extraordinary. Through every note, every melody, and every performance, she left a legacy that would inspire generations to come. And as she continued to play, to compose, and to share her music, she knew that this was only the beginning of a lifetime filled with beauty, emotion, and endless possibilities.